Hello, everyone, and welcome to the FM show. On this week's episode, ways to spice up your saves. Whether you're looking for a road to glory, rebuilding a fallen giant, building a nation, or simply staying in Florence, we're here to help you. So let's get started. Welcome to the FM show. I'm Tony Jameson, and before we go further, you might be able to hear a little bit of background noise. I've got a leak, and we're not just talking about my defence here at this point. So, Stadium Jameson is undergoing a tiny bit of renovation at present. So we will try, and if you are getting slightly distracted, apologies is all we're going to say. But it has to be done, and it has to be done now. So, as I say, I'm Tony Jameson, and joining me, as always, is RDF Tactics and producer Steve. Aaron, Steve, how are we?
Things are not too bad. I've actually had a little break from Football Manager, but I'm excited to be back playing again. And yeah, that's how I am at the moment.
We bring the Tactics Garage back, and you stop playing Football Manager. That's literally
Well,
your thing.
I say I have the break. I haven't had a break from Football Manager. Offline is more so online. So offline, I'm still playing a lot. Obviously, I can't have enough of Football Manager, but I've had a little break online, is what I was meant to say.
And if we're talking about online, Aaron, obviously we tried to address this last week on the last episode.
Yes.
Where could people find you online for those saves?
Twitch.tv/RDF Tactics, and on YouTube as well, RDF Tactics on YouTube, where, of course, you can hear me talk about some tactics.
Excellent stuff. So there's Aaron having a little break. Steve, are you having a lovely break in Florence?
Well, I was just thinking, obviously, in this episode, we're going to be doing various scenarios in terms of spicing up saves and Football Manager, including building a nation. And Tony, it sounds like he's building a nation behind the disease as things go.
Physically, literally, and not even metaphorically. I'm building everything right now from the ground up, starting with the infrastructure of the local housing and the community.
Yes, exactly. Make the players feel happy, more at home, etc. Give the youth academy. Yes, I'm getting into the sort of crunchy, not the full crunch stage of my current season, but it's sort of the outer edges of the crunch, if that makes sense. And so 2030, Fiorentina beat PSG 4-2 on aggregate, including, I mentioned the 4-1 victory in the last episode, hitting them on the counter and getting goals and set piece, all that sort of stuff. Saw out the second leg at the Parc des Princes. 1-0 defeat, but didn't matter. So I'm learning a lot in terms of different game management for different scenarios, So I think actually something maybe at some point we should do as a section on the show, not to have a production meeting as we actually do the actual show, but maybe that's more efficient. I don't know. Is do something about, actually let us know on the various ways you can get in touch with the show, whether this would be interesting for you in terms of that in-game management, whether we go through a game and sort of go, well, this is happening right now, so how should we adapt to that? Because, we spoke a lot on the last episode, and we'll talk about in future about tactics and sort of fundamental, this is how you set up. But so many things in this game, which is make it so compelling to play, are the sort of moments of like, right, for the next 10 minutes, or in this sort of final 20-minute game state scenario, you should do this outside of your wider philosophy, obviously, another thing we spoke about in the last episode. So I think maybe a bit of like, in-game management would be a good thing to talk about, because in this particular game, again the second leg against PSG, I kind of threw out all my fundamental principles because I wanted to win. So played on cautious. I played one of my best technical centre back at defensive midfielder, because Zeno van Housen, I don't know how good he is on FN23 or future iterations, but he's great. I think he might be at Inter Milan right now or on loan somewhere, but he's a really good ball-playing centre-back if you're looking for one. So he played at defensive midfielder, hitting on the break, all the things. I was basically absorbing all the pressure, just trying to keep out that PSG attack. And playing Lorenzo Luca as well, big target forward again. So not all the things that go into the philosophy previously, but yeah, that in-game management, and sort of another thing we should do as well in future is talk about how you prepare for a big game like that, which again means in training, means in your tactics, you probably will do certain things differently compared to the bulk of your league games, I would say. So that's kind of where things are in Florence at the moment.
I think in-game management absolutely has to be something that we need to explore on a future episode. You mentioned there the big games. I believe, Aaron, you might be able to correct me on this point. There is, as part of the training, there is a big game training slot as well you can do, isn't it? If something massive comes up like a cup final, you can of course train for those specific moments. So absolutely, definitely something that I think, Aaron, you might want to touch upon. Definitely something we're going to be looking at in the future. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Especially the big match preparation as well, because there's sort of that, people say Pep Guardiola overthinks before some of these big games, and sometimes when you're behind that computer screen, that tends to be you sometimes, or me. I should speak for myself probably, but there's times where I'm playing certain teams and it's like, I know I have to change something. Sometimes I do overthink, and I'm like, I'm doing too much. There's some games where I'm actually going back into their previous matches, and I just watch every of their goalkeeper distribution just to get a grip of how they build out from the back and stuff like that. But then there are certain times, obviously, when they play you, they will also change into it. So sometimes there's part of me that does all of that, and then they play me and they play slightly different. But there is games where I will slightly prepare differently, and also in game as well. Like Steve said, sometimes the game's just not going the way you planned it to go. And then there'll be times where I've actually just thrown out everything that we've done in training just so we can deal with this 20 minutes whilst we're under pressure. And that's happened a few times.
Those in-game moments are horrible, and FM23 can be brutal. Steve, you've not even experienced this yet. The second that momentum swings, as Aaron says, you're sitting there, everything's lovely, you're 3-1 up, and all of a sudden you're going, we're losing this 4-3, and there's nothing I can do about it. And just the wave of opposition coming at you, and you just sit and you panic, and you're like, I'm just going to hit all the buttons, and you go, great, we have lost, because of course we have.
I've got this thing. I don't know what is it unethical, but like, so in the game you can actually change your mentality in game. So when it's like the 85th minute, I'm literally there, defensive, balance, attacking, defensive, balance. I just keep changing it every second, and I'm like, is this like pausing the game? I don't know if it's unethical or whatever it is, but I'm literally last 5 minutes, I'm just changing my mentality just every second, literally. And then so I'm just hoping, basically what I'm hoping for is the game just rides out, no highlights, no nothing. Because again, those momentum swings are horrible.
Do you have something to confess, my son?
I don't know. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know. So I saw someone else streaming. It's because I saw someone else streaming, and they were changing their players. Like, just one moment they put their whole midfield into the defensive midline.
Yeah.
They'll play for 2 minutes, and they'll go back into their tactics and move everyone forward again. And they'll just keep doing that.
Literally like 2 minutes of the 90-minute clock.
Yeah, just keep doing it. And then I think for that person, it just hopes that it just cancels out or just no highlights happen. It's just keep doing it.
Oh, it's
so
almost like trying to trick
always
the game.
changing. Yeah, sort of. And it's just changing your team as well, sort of thing. So even for me, it's like 1 minute I'm telling my team to attack. Next minute I'm telling them to sit back. So I don't know if it's like once the game kicks off, if our team actually pushes forward, slightly pushes them backwards, and then kind of thing. I'm not sure what it actually does, but I just do it. And hopefully no highlights happen.
Wow. Well, do you not just, I suppose that's like, sometimes I do when like I just know the team's better. I'm basically holding on to the game. I'll drop it because I've mentioned previously in previous shows that I would do comprehensive highlights, but there are certain games where I'm like, either this game is done, let's just speed through it. Ideally, or I will drop it down to sort of key highlights, for example, too, because I'm just like, just let it be over. It's
a bit of a sticky one. We don't know if Football Manager are being truthful about it, or so Dr. Benji actually reckons that when you change something in your tactic, you're kind of like rolling the dice a little bit. So the game might have it set, or the game might have how it's going at the moment. Then when you make a change, it has to recode certain things. So he thinks that it's basically a roll of dice when you make a change, a certain thing, But then when it was brought to Football Manager, they were kind of like, they rebuffed that. It's like, no, that's not true.
I see. This is the thing where I'm like, when it comes to tricking the game, let's say for the sake of argument,
Yeah.
is that being good at the game?
No, definitely.
Like,
definitely,
I'm not sure
definitely
that's being good at the game. I think
Definitely
that's just
not.
kind of,
Definitely.
it's another
not.
way of achieving results, but it's gaming the game,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just I've got too much for kind of, I think in the old days, they'd call it a Corinthian spirit, the sort of like the game should be played in the right way sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it depends what you want, really.
I always tend to start off like that, and it gets to a point where I'm just so stressed. I just have to. It could be anybody, because there's just so many little things in the game where like we sort of know how it works. Even down to selling a player, you can do certain things that kind of increases your chances of getting rid of that player. Sort of thing that people just do it. Yeah, people just do it.
Like what, Aaron? Asking for a friend, but like what?
They could just, like literally. So there'll be a player that just always rejecting teams, and the moment you can just literally just find them for no reason and that sort of thing, and it'll get to a point where they just will accept any offer just to get out. You can kind of, it's basically like real life freezing out, basically. But you're not really freezing them out in the game. It's just weird, yeah. You can basically just stop paying someone's wages for 2 weeks for no reason.
What?
Literally just find them. Just find someone for 2 weeks and then
they get upset.
This? Just tell them. Oh, I haven't. No.
Okay, right. Yeah.
I like loaning players out as well. So if I can't get rid, I just loan them out.
Yeah.
But that's something like, if you watch people on Twitch, you will see a lot of sort of they're played against the game rather than playing because they want to be a football
playing
manager.
The sort of fundamental stages thing of like, this is how you do the game. That's interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
A lot of people, yeah.
Yeah. I have to say as well, because obviously last week on the show we spoke about you went through my Fiorentina tactic and stuff like that. And it's only been a few games, and because they've been scenario specific, because it's been the sort of edge of the crunch scenario, I've not yet seen the full benefit. So I was hoping to be able to come on the show this week and in this episode and say, Aaron, you're a genius. You've done it. But,
that hasn't panned out.
So, well, but no, not because the changes won't make the formation better.
Yeah.
But more because the games that I've had, because I've had the Champions League knockout rounds and I've had the games in between. So you're prioritizing your first team players, your best players in the Champions League games. So you have to rotate pretty heavily. Especially by that stage of the season, right? When you've got, fortunately in Serie A, there's a winter break. So you do have a little bit of a physical reset. I think in any campaign where you've got a European fixture load, you have a stage where players get injured, fatigue comes in, and you're suddenly you're suddenly playing a side.
Even down to that, like people would literally play a game, rest them for 3 days, play a game, rest them for 2 days. They're just always going to be fit. Literally every game.
So even if you rest,
this is exactly what people. That's how I'm like. They're just played against the game, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because to be fair, when it comes to training and the recovery sessions and stuff, like we don't actually know how that sort of stuff works. So, for an example, you can literally have a game, put everyone on recovery for those like midweek games, and then go back to the thing, but they're still knackered. Whereas it works slightly different if you just rest them. Just literally grab your whole team, right click, put everyone on rest, get into the next game, and everyone's back at like 94, 95, 96% fitness.
The listeners and viewers, well, listeners won't know because they wouldn't have seen, but viewers will have seen Tony had to go and deal with his Building a Nation workforce for a second. And in that interim, Aaron and I started talking about ethics in Football Manager. So, and unethical management practices.
Yes.
Ethical Manager 24 is coming out. We're all very keen to see it. So,
and we were saying, Tony, that like certain things that are gaming the game rather than playing the game.
Yeah.
And if ethically that should be good. However, what Aaron just said there about the rest thing, basically you put players on rest for 2 days, they reset, you don't have to worry about fatigue anymore. See, I think I will do that now. That's the problem. I'm just a hypocrite. Just the will to win overtakes any sort of sense
unethical,
of...
or whether that's just clever, because rest and recovery are two very, very different things. So I don't think that's technically unethical, Aaron.
Because I mean, just before you had to attend to things, Tony, I don't know if you felt this way, but I feel like Aaron was steps away from the confessional. You know, it felt
he was walking towards the door, wasn't he? Like, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. I think I'm probably okay. I'll come back if it gets worse.
To be fair though, like I could be stepping in that territory because, like, if I'm being totally honest, it's worked and it's planned exactly how it's supposed to or how I wanted it to. So you could say that maybe there is a case of something. Yeah,
we all
it's
have
it's an interesting conversation,
to reconciliation and
it's it's just the rest one that I find a bit of a thing because there's something else not given, right? So if you are resting, you're not training, right? So how are my players still able to be match fit, but also not crumble because they're not cohesive enough without learning that stuff in training? If you kind of get what I'm getting at.
Their legs, aren't they? You know, you don't want to be
sitting drawback. There's no drawback.
Sitting on a rowing machine. That's not going to make you. That's not going to rest you, is it? That's just recovery. That's active recovery. Whereas if you say, lads, put your feet up, get yourself a bit of rest, have an isotonic drink, come back fully fit tomorrow, rather than going, there's 10k on the assault bike. That's going to ruin you.
But there's no negative to it though. You don't lose your familiarity.
So like cohesiveness.
You're supposed to be training your tactic. But if you're not training your tactic, how do you understand the tactic then when it comes to match day?
But I guess it's the argument that by that point in the season, a few episodes back, of course, which one was it? Pre-season episode?
Okay, yeah.
We spoke about like, you know, you did your pre-season training, your tactics. You know, during the season, you'll be doing technical sessions, etc. So the argument will be that by this point in the season, because we're talking specifically about the back half of the season, sort of, what are we at? Like March, April onwards, where, you know, you're into the business end, the team cohesion, the training stuff, if you've done it well by this point, should be up there, would be the argument, I suppose.
Just don't know, because I'm someone that uses it myself. I do it myself, but even I just feel it's a bit, I don't know. Even when I'm doing it, I could just feel I shouldn't be doing this.
Okay. Well, I'll see you soon, my son.
As we say all the time, Aaron, if you feel like you shouldn't be doing it, it's time to confess. Okay?
The thing is, I've been doing it in front of hundreds of people literally every day, 2 times a day. We win a game, everyone read. And again, this is another thing, because people like, it doesn't matter if your natural fitness is 1 or if it's at 20. It's just like there's no real difference, sort of thing. I don't know. We'll talk about it.
We will talk about it in the FM confessional. Okay?
I think the whole community is going to have to jump in this confession as well.
Yes, wow.
I think because it works so well, I think that's what it is. Like, if it was like, okay, my players are losing some sort of match fitness, or if they're losing something because of it, then maybe I could see like, yeah. But there's just literally, for me anyway, there's just no negative to it.
Well, look, none of us are free from thin.
Yeah. And it's also, we maybe got to understand training a bit more as well before we actually can say for sure. Because what are they resting from? Are they still turning up to match meetings? I don't know. It's just the resting. Like, no pitch or gym work.
But what is it? But what are they resting though? Are they resting their
what
arms?
does it mean,
are they resting
though?
their legs? Are they resting their brains? Are they resting everything? Are they sitting down? Are they fully relaxed? Are they only half relaxed? I don't know. I don't get it.
I can have chance conversion and match tactics. Chance conversion, you're clearly on the pitch, but match tactics, what is it? Maybe that's, I don't know. Maybe they don't. I don't know. What are they resting from? Okay. Are they still turning up to meetings, or are they just at home? That's what I need to know.
I think we put a pin in it and we move on.
We have desperately trying to. This is meant to be right again on air, online, live production feedback, because we can't do it the other way in the new world. This is meant to be the short, snappy intro where we catch up on our, how it's all going. But so far, Tony's had to lend a hand in the bathroom fixing.
Yeah.
Fixing a
Aaron's having a breakdown.
Aaron's having a crisis of conscience, or they're not, and then doubling down on his evil behaviour. And then not getting the cue when we're trying to move into the bit we're actually meant to be talking about in this show. Anyway, Tony, there you go.
You can get in touch with us via Twitter. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and of course, join us on Discord. It's the FM Show Pod on all of our social media. The Discord link is, of course, in the description. And if you want to send us an email, it is the fmshowpod@gmail.com. We've got a live show coming up on Monday, the 6th of November in Nottingham at the Canal House. It's part of the Nottingham Comedy Festival. If you're interested in coming to see the FM show live, seeing myself, seeing producer Steve, seeing RDF Tactics in person, then there's a ticket link in the description below. The tickets are priced at £5. Come and see the show. Come and hang out afterwards. We'll do a bit of a meet and greet. We'll do a bit of a chat. We'll talk FM. Bring your stories. Bring Matt Doherty if you can. But yeah, Monday the 6th of November, the Canal House in Nottingham, £5. Ticket link in the description below. Get your tickets. Come and hang out. It's going to be fantastic. And of course, you can also join us on Patreon, where of course you can support the podcast if you can afford it. Of course, you can become a member of the FM Show team, which gives you access to exclusive bonus content such as the live show we recorded at Insomnia Gaming Festival back last Easter. We, of course, have some bonus episodes on there. Some extra long Tactics Garages will be coming up in the future as well. You can sign up from as little as £3 a month. Of course, you also get your early access. To sign up, visit patreon.com/the FM Show Pod and become a member, just like Joseph Beach, James Denson, and Luke McKenna did this week. So appreciate you all. Your support, of course, means the world to us. Now, speaking of the world, shall we potentially look to travel the world? Last episode, we talked tactics. Today's show, we are talking save ideas. Aaron, of course, we spoke about your building a nation. Some of you might be familiar with the concept of rebuilding reputations of a fallen giant. Or you might be like Steve, and you're just happy being in Florence forever. However you choose to play the game is, of course, absolutely fine, but we're here to offer you some alternatives that you may or may not have considered. So, Steve, our job, mine and Aaron's particularly, is to try and convince you that there are other ways to play the game than just one lovely time in Italy, okay? Think of us like an FM travel agent almost in that sense. There are other places. Would you like to come and see somewhere else? And you're like, no, I'm fine, thank you. Obviously, we've said your current save is Fiorentina, but are there any previous saves that have caught your imagination?
Well, this did make me think about my very, very first ever save on this game, when it was known as the previous iteration back in the 0102 days. And you'll be shocked to hear it was in Italy. But it wasn't Fiorentina. My first CM love was actually AS Roma, because that was the year the Roma last won the Scudetto IRL. Fabio Capello, that team, Totti, Battistuta, etc., Vincenzo Montella, all those kind of guys.
That was an incredible team.
Right. And that whole story. And, you know, back then as well, it's one of those where you're going to go, Lazio won it the previous year. I think it was under Sven-Göran Eriksson, then Roma the next year. And you thought, oh, these are big teams. They win Serie A. They are the contenders. But actually, that was a real anomaly in terms of like the Milan clubs and the Juve normally being dominant. And I first ever trophy on this game of any iteration that I won was the Supercoppa Italia, because Roma were in it previous year. Won it, and it was back in the days, obviously, not even the dots, and it was just the sort of flashy, etc. thing. There was some sort of random trophy in the office of my childhood home, which was a Pegasus type thing. My parents both work in reinsurance. It was some sort of reinsurance thing. I wrote in pencil, because, you know, consider it, on the base of that trophy, Supercoppa Italia, I think it would have been 0102. And I hoisted it like a real trophy.
Join us on the FM Confessional with producer Steve.
So yeah, that specific save lives long in the memory. I had a good one with Barcelona, I think, in FM 08 it would have been. And but as you alluded to, generally speaking, my saves have been pretty traditional. You get a club, and I kind of feel like if for whatever reason I leave that club, in my head the save is kind of over. And I
Yeah.
hope, and do let us know if that is you as well, if you're more of the traditional sort of player of the game like that. So I'm actually, interested to hear the sort of scenario style saves that you guys have mentioned in passing, but I've never really tried it myself.
I think you mentioned a couple of really interesting points. And one thing I think that you have mentioned with the trophy, of course, is a few of us have done that before. To be
Yeah, I was
honest.
gonna
And
say
I
I've done
feel,
the exact same.
and I feel like that opens up another avenue for our viewers now, listeners, to get in touch with. At what point have you taken the game a little bit too far? Like, we've all got a little trophy. Who's got a shirt with a player's name on the back? Who's gone to visit
Yes.
the stadiums? All that sort of stuff. Get in touch and let us know that, because there is a lot of us that have done stuff like that. Okay. I love the idea, Steve, like you say, of this one club save. My Blythe Spartan save for me is one of my favorite saves back on FM 10. But you're right. What happens when you leave? And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Really, it's like, is it over? Is it the next part of the story? For me personally, Aaron, I'm one of those. I like a journey person save. I like to turn myself up. I like to go unemployed at the start of the game. I like to get my record of achievement, right?
Yeah.
Stick it under my arm, start knocking on all these doors at the job centre, going, right, can I have a job? Can I have a job? And then they go, yeah, that's great. You're off to Malta or whatever. And you start there. And that for me is just like, I enjoy that, to be honest. I like going, finding new leagues I've never done, finding new experiences, picking up players and creating my story that way.
Yeah. I think recently I've discovered it's kind of where your head's at. So I was always like, Steve, like my game, and I always have this feeling as well. If I leave this club, I know the save is going to be over for me. And then I still do it. Just take that gamble and I leave and I'm like, I don't have that love anymore. I'm always checking on my ex-club results and stuff like that. I'll play about 10 games. I'm like, it's just not the same. It's literally not the same. But I think it's because where your head's at. So I then done a different save recently. So me moving to different clubs is actually really, really new for me. It's a new experience, but it's kind of like, so I started at Everton. So we had this save where we went to the top 7 leagues in Europe and tried to win titles with teams that I've never done it. And so like once we was at Everton, it kind of just became that motivation and we got kind of excited. Where can we go to next? Where can we go to next? Because that's where my head was at in the game. But I usually tend to start my FM saves with, this is my club, and then we're going to build something so great. It's going to take us 15 years to get there and all of this stuff. And you just really become that one-man club in your saves. But I think if you already have that idea in your head before the season's even started, like we could possibly leave if we win something, if we win a trophy, or if we hit our targets, we could possibly leave. I think the game can actually become fun as well, doing it that way.
I think the thing with a journey person save, like there's various ways of doing this. I guess to sort of define it really, journey person, you will hop around different clubs. You'll go and manage in different countries, different leagues and all that sort of stuff. Like some people say stay for 2 years, move on. There's of course no right or wrong way to do this. I suppose really the only thing I would say with a journey person save is what is the end goal? Really, like I guess with Steve there, he's got the goal of he wants to be this dynasty with Fiorentina. There is an end point. There's a tangible thing at the end of it. Whereas with a journey person, do you ever fully complete the challenge? I suppose really is that question. Do you just look around and go, oh, I visited all these lovely places. That was great, but what have I won? Like what's the purpose of a journey person save? And I suppose Aaron, you're talking there about always looking back to your previous clubs with a little bit of like what could have been and what might have been. And I've had that, and that is a thing, but there's also the possibility of going back at some point and fixing that. So there is actually that to consider as well.
So because like I said, we had that target, top 7 clubs in Europe. So we then completed the target. The options were go back to now Everton, where Everton in our world now need a rebuild because they were this team that won the Premier League, they've won the Champions League, and now whoever's taken over now is just, they're not doing that. So we had that option. Should we go back and actually have a rebuild in our own world? And then, or go to South America and try something new. the moment we stepped out and went to South America is kind of when the save just died for us, because it was never a target. It was never something for us to do in that save. And the moment we took that risk, I felt, because our heart wasn't in it. From the beginning, our heart wasn't in before we even made that move. But I tried so hard to make the most out of it, but it just wasn't there because that was never the target.
Does that often happen then with journey person says in regards of you? The idea is to sort of, okay, I give myself 2 seasons, that's it, I move on, whatever happens. But then actually you fall in love.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like the idea, I suppose, like a journey person is, it's a sort of a catch-all title for any save where you move clubs, really, I suppose, and you don't have a one club save. You try and create this journey, and it could be from from bottom to top. You could have a journey person save from tier 10 up to the Premier League. You could do it that way, or it could be you're jet setting around the world. I guess something like a Pentagon, for example, we'll maybe talk about that a bit later on. That could be classed as a journey person save. But you're right. You do go in with the idea of, right, I'm going a couple of years here and then I'll move on, but you can't help but falling in love, Steve. That's the problem. And sometimes you might think, I have to move, but you've just got a crop of youngsters or a crop of players who go, I can't leave this team behind. They're my team, But eventually, you have to.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not the team. Sometimes it could be the league. So in when we went to the top 7, it was the Eredivisie, and it was just like, this league is just so much fun. We don't actually want to leave. And then we went to the Bundesliga, where things were a bit more tight, more difficult, where you can win 4-1 one week and then lose 4-0 the next week, sort of thing. And it was like a big difference for us. But we just loved the Eredivisie, and it was like we just fell in love with the league, not necessarily the team that we were managing.
I suppose as well, then, if you're, are there sort of, as you say, it's guidelines rather than specific rules, but would the guideline be stay no more than 1 season, stay no more than 2 seasons? What's the vibe?
I think the general consensus is 2 to 3 years tends to be. Managers get itchy feet, they move on, really. But let's face it, some managers, this guy, for example, right here, is often moved on by the board within the 3-year period. So sometimes I do a journey person, not by choice.
Because I was just, and that's very sad. But because I was thinking the possible appeal of it would be, because like when you're buying young players and you are developing them, you're buying them, they're like 1.5 star, maybe 2 star, but you're playing them and you can't guarantee that they're going to be hits.
Yeah.
So I suppose there is an appeal to sort of just squad building for the short term, in terms of like, bunch of like seasoned veterans all on 4 stars, but like will drop off very soon. I don't care because I want my results now. Whatever happens to the club afterwards, not my concern.
There is a school of thought in that, and listening back to the transfers episode we did a few weeks ago, there are people will talk about that going, well, you know what, I'm here for the short term. I'll put these big transfers in that'll be spread over like sort of 3 or 4 years. I'm going to spend all the money now because, hey, you know what, in 4 years, it's not my problem, right? And you move on. And that's a horrible way of doing it. I can't think of that. I can only ever pay in cash because I'm like, but if I leave, I want the club to be in a better position than when I arrived. And that's what I do. You're right. You can't really plan for long term with Wonder Kids. You can't get too attached, or you can throw the rules out and go, you know what, I'm staying. This is my club now. And you can make that your home.
So actually, it's a good way of opening up, because right back in the first episode of the new era, we spoke about how you choose a save and how to recalibrate, and maybe actually you start it off with the journey person sort of perspective to give you the chance to look at the Eredivisie, for example, and to sort of open up your mind in terms of where you can save. And so you start off unemployed, and then the world, this massive game in terms of the places and the leagues that you can manage in, shows you the way, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. And for us as well, like in the save that we had, the top 7 league, another target is to leave the club in a position they can go and obviously compete without us as well. So it wasn't the fact, Everton's giving us 80 million, let's spend 80 million. It was like, this is our last season, we've got 80 million, let's just spend 20 of this and then leave the rest for the next person. But also we've got good youngsters here as well. So even knowing that we're going to leave, it was still, we're going to have to bring in good youngsters so they can develop here, and then hopefully the AI manager can then develop these players as well, which is it's a bit challenging, to be fair, because you are in a spot where you have to find young players that are actually decent enough now to play. So the next manager that comes in can trust that young player to play them, which has happened in a couple times. So when you go 5 years back now and you look back at the team, oh, he's still playing. Oh, he's the top goal scorer. Like that was the feeling that we was having every time we went back and checked. Everton made the Champions League, and then we're celebrating like we've done it. But deep down, it is a part of us because like we look at the squad and it's like, yeah, we signed him. And actually, a couple of times we've actually loaned him to him as well. We've been the grass shop where we loaned a player to Everton, and only Everton, because there was other teams interested. We're like, no, he's going Everton. And we've done that sort of thing, and it makes the save fun.
And that's the thing. If you find those players and you can start to love them, that's brilliant. Now, that's obviously journey person. That's one way of doing it. You've sort of touched upon a little bit there, Aaron, as well. The reputation rebuild is again a very, very popular save. You can take, for example, a fallen giant, and my God, there is a lot in football, isn't there? So this game is littered with them. You can have someone like, for example, Everton might be deemed as a fallen giant in the Premier League. But hey, you know what? Oldham are also a fallen giant all the way down in the non-league. They've got you've got giants all over the place. You've got Malaga. We've got Palermo. You've got Sampdoria now in Serie B for next season.
Yeah, that's a great example.
You could go all the way down. Bursaspor in Turkey are now in Division 3. So many. You could go through a list of former European giants or world giants and rebuild that club. And Steve, that for me, that feels like if I was to push you towards anything, I would be saying, Steve, here is the chance to be the chosen one.
Well, yeah, because there's Valencia as well as another good example in Spain. You know, the sort of going 20 years ago, won La Liga under Rafa Benitez, and they've sort of been flirting with relegation, as they say, as well in recent seasons. That is appealing. That is appealing in terms of that kind of way of, because in a weird way, that's the sort of save I like to do anyway. There's part of the element with Fiorentina is harkening back again to the early 2000s to that team of Rui Costa and Toldo and Batistuta, who won the Coppa Italia and win the Champions League and beat Arsenal when Arsenal, that one season in 2001, Arsenal had a Champions League campaign and they played at Wembley from a capacity point of view. Lost to Fiorentina. And so there's an element of reputation rebuild in the appeals for Fiorentina anyway. So that's a nice one that kind of in a different way challenges your skill set, doesn't it? Because, you know, going to a PSG or a Man City or a whoever and just making them slightly better by throwing another 100 million at a player and winning the league and, you know, going deep in the Champions League. I mean, look, if that's what you're into, then and that's because that's the whole kind of time you want to dedicate to the game thing, the pleasure when you get out of it thing too. You know, all are welcome here. But yeah, if you're looking for something a bit more challenging in terms of like, well, I want to see if I can, you know, outperform the bigger, better funded teams. That does sound like a good one to do.
And what I've noticed with those teams, I mean, we mentioned Bursaspor there. I realized that managing in Turkey is so much fun off the back of managing them. It's a one we'll talk about in the future, by the way. It's such a fun league to play in. And I also at Kaiserslautern, when Kaiserslautern were in 3 Liga, the third division of German football. Again, you just don't realize how fun these leagues are. And then you see there's some absolutely incredible teams in there. I mean, I know, obviously, Derby, again, would be seen as a bit of a rebuild. Bolton, for example. There's so many teams that you can look at that have slipped. And Aaron, I mean, the ceiling is there, really, isn't it? Like, ultimately, you want to take that team right back to the top. But you can, again, decide what the top is.
Exactly. And also sometimes you're actually setting yourself a mini challenge. A lot of these clubs are actually in a financial situation which isn't a situation you want to be in. So a lot of it is actually the first few years is trying to get out of that bad financial situation. And then the save really kicks on for you to go and rebuild the side. But it's a great save. It's something that I tend to like doing as well. So I tend to use Google a lot and just type in Fallen Giants football and I just pick one of the teams that are from the one.
What happens? Do that now. What happens when they come up?
Oh yeah, we'll do that.
Give ourselves some other ideas, the listeners and viewers, some more ideas in terms of like Fallen Giants that because obviously we all have our ideas of what giants are, and I agree completely. As the son of an Evertonian, Everton are 100% Fallen Giant. The 5th, I think it is still, most successful team in English football history in terms of league titles. But last trophy they won was in 1995. So people don't today realise how big a club Everton is historically.
No one says Sheffield Wednesday. No one says Sheffield Wednesday. After the last time. Bordeaux in France are currently in like the regional leagues. Just about they got relegated all the way down. And when you start looking at each nation's got at least one massive club to come back up.
So on the website I'm looking at, number 1 is Aston Villa. Ooh, interesting. Obviously winning the European Cup in 1982. There's also Nottingham Forest on the list. Hamburg in Germany. Stoja Bucharesti. Now that one sounds really interesting. I actually learned a little bit about that because obviously my save's in Romania as well. So you kind of learn about who are the actual bigger teams and the teams with the rich history in Romania. Feyenoord is on the list.
Really?
Yeah. And some honourable mentions
the
like
European Cup, aren't they?
Yeah, honourable mentions like Marseille, but I do think some of these names are a bit high profile, possibly because it is save ideas for
second or third or in Liga.
Yeah, I think these are kind of the more high reputed teams, given it's actually Football Manager saves ideas. So that's Pro Vercelli. Pro Vercelli is here as well. Oh, I tried that. I've tried that one.
I suppose in a weird way, if you go back far enough, Torino in Italy as well. They were
Torino,
the Torino team who won multiple Scudetto. Tragically, a lot of them lost in an air disaster. But yeah, historically, Torino one of the more successful teams in Italy as well. So loads to choose from there.
Deportivo La Coruña. That is the popular one. That is people's favourite ones in Football Manager. Yeah, that's the popular one.
That's good.
That's everyone's starting up their Football Manager saves now.
But you know what? That's the thing. Like because in your head you instantly remember the players that were there. So you're thinking of a Roy Mackay, you're thinking of a Diego Tristan, you're thinking of
Juan Carlos Valeron.
And that's actually that's the thing as well. So when you are doing like a Deportivo, you're actually kind of trying to rebuild some of these players as well. Like you're actually trying to find stylistic players that are similar to them. Oh, he could be my Roy Mackay. Oh, he could be my Valorant. And that tends to happen a lot of the times as well. And that also becomes part of the fun.
Just a quick one, just while this episode's on. I hope you're enjoying it, by the way. And if you are enjoying it, please consider hitting that like button. That'd be much appreciated. It shows us who's enjoying the episodes. And also, while you're there, why not consider hitting the subscribe button as well? You'll find out exactly when all the new episodes drop, so you'll never miss a beat. That, of course, pushes us up through the YouTube algorithm. It gets us in front of more eyes. And, of course, the more the podcast grows, the better it's going to be. There's also a little space for a comment, so leave us a comment. We love reading them, and we will, of course, get back to you as well. And speaking about getting back, let's get back to the episode. And if you're wanting to go above building a reputation and you want to build a nation, Aaron, how do you do that? Because that's what you're currently doing on Twitch.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this last week as well. I'm actually just learning on the job, to be fair, and finding little just niche things to do. So at the moment, we're bringing in loads of players per window. We're hitting 20 players per window sort of thing. But obviously my sort of idea is I can bring these guys in, these sort of unknown players, but then loan them back to teams just in Romania. Hopefully they're better than what they've currently got. And it helps them give them a push, especially in Europe as well, because Romanian teams doing well in Europe becomes very, very important to the save. So I'm actually in a position where I'm selling and loading out very good players, but to league rivals and competition as well, which makes the actual Romanian league very interesting, because sometimes you do get to a point where you're really good for your league, but not quite good enough in the European competitions. So it does get to a point where it's like, okay, we're just winning every game. But at the moment, it's not anymore, because I've now sold a top striker to Cluj, who now I play him, does the obvious thing, goes and scores the winner against me, sort of thing. So yeah, the save right now is heating up. It is heating up.
So the whole purpose of a Build a Nation, just to clarify, is you want to take a nation who has a strong reputation, or maybe a small reputation. You want to build that nation's reputation as high as you can go, isn't it? So the national team has to obviously improve. The league format in itself in the nation has to improve. So you want to take, for example, Romania, you want to make that league up there competing with Liga and with La Liga, with Bundesliga, Serie A, the Premier League. So in order to do that, you've obviously got to theoretically keep the players within the country. So it becomes like a sort of homegrown style save. Try and sort of develop as many players as you can. And you're almost selling players to your rivals in order to stop them leaving the country and going elsewhere, because that's not going to make the league any stronger by having
Exactly,
the
yeah.
superstar go and play elsewhere. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly that. The difficulty part, or the difficult part I'm finding at the moment, is staff. So obviously you can't offer your staff to a different club sort of thing. So that's kind of the difficulty, trying to get in to be respectful, higher quality managers or higher reptile managers in, and assistant managers and scouts and that sort of stuff. That's kind of the challenging part at the moment. But even in our league, we don't have the best staff anyway. So maybe it's not something that I should be tackling right now anyway.
Does that have a benefit to the coefficient longer term? If you've done one of these, is there a slightly it's a selfless endeavor, right, in terms of building a nation as part of the challenge? But does it have selfish benefits in regards to the better the Romanian league, as a sake of argument? Other teams in Europe, for example, builds the UEFA coefficient, which then has a benefit to qualification for Europa League places or Champions League places, that sort of thing. So is there, if you obviously, this sounds like a longer term save as well. This is like a 4 or 5 season save minimum, rather than the journey person, which is a bit of a shorter commitment.
This sounds like a 30-year save.
Yeah, we're talking 30 years. Yeah, wow. Like literally minimum. Because obviously the time you're strengthening, Manchester City are still strengthening. Real Madrid are still strengthening as well with all their high budget. So you're kind of just always kind of sort of playing catch up until you can kind of get a miracle and get a European win hero there. So we did quite well the first time we was in the Champions League, and actually that already affected us big time, because then it meant that I didn't have to do the third qualifying round. I think we go straight into the Champions League qualification playoffs, which now that, again, we play now less games and we're closer to the Champions League, and an easier way for us to get into the group stages of the Champions League. And I'm guessing we keep repeating that and doing well in the Champions League as well. Then there's going to be a moment where we just automatically go into the group stage if we win the league. But at the moment, we're at a point where we have to qualify through playoffs to get into the Champions League group stages.
Would you
and obviously,
oh, sorry, Tony. Would you what was the word I was going to say? Would you sim a lot of those sort of seasons? Because I'm just thinking about, as someone who wouldn't necessarily, 30 seasons sounds like a lot. So what would you do to sort of streamline that?
So because I stream that, we play all the games. Yeah, I say all the games. Pre-season, I don't really play pre-season, but that's about it. Yeah, you kind of sort of just play every game. But Football Manager loves to throw curveballs anyway, so it gets to a point where you're winning, and then something happens, and it's like, actually, what is going on now? Yeah.
The problem, obviously, with trying to sim it is that you're trusting the AI not to sell players outside of the nation as well, and to bring in players that are outside the nation. So you do absolutely have to keep all your eyes on the ball. It sounds a lot like an FM24 save, Steve. I don't recommend starting to build a nation right now. You haven't got time, unless you don't want to sleep between now and launch day. But yeah, that's definitely for our more, I'm going to call it our more hardcore viewers and listeners. That's not one to play on mobile, I don't think.
But then again, it just depends. So for our target, it wasn't necessarily to be number 1. It's to break into the top 5. Now, if you want to break into the top 5, you can easily. Well, I say easily. It's still not easy, but you could pick the Portuguese league, or you could pick Eredivisie and try and break in the top 5 as your sort of short term. But warning, it's still not short. Unless you're going to win the Champions League pretty soon, it's still not going to be short term.
Okay, so there you go. You can do it with a relative full nation, or you can do it with a slightly more popular nation. Make it as easy or as difficult as you like. Speaking of easy and difficult, Steve, difficult's one I like. Non-league to legend. There you go. Oof. Sunday League to Champions League. That's what I fancy.
No.
So turn up at your local park. Ask if there's enough players for a game, and see what happens. That for me, that is my Football Manager love. Genuinely going right at the bottom and just seeing where we go. Sometimes these become journey person saves, but if you can get a one club save from a club that's just started out in, for example, Vanarama National, South or North, then that's the dream, right? Taking that small little seed of a club and growing it into It's so good, so good.
So you would start off with, as you say, in English, just use the English pyramid system as an example. You start off with the Vanarama North or South,
Yeah.
and you would start off employed. You choose a club.
You
From
could
one
do,
of
you
those
could do. Or I mean,
divisions.
you could do unemployed and pick a club at the lowest
Yeah.
levels because
Yeah.
you've got no reputation, all that sort of stuff. You can pick a club and go straight from there and make it this one club safe. But yeah, that's the way of doing it. I would either sort of go, right, I'm going to go and pick this side because, again, as we've said before, maybe there's a slight draw to them, or there's sort of something that looks like, yeah, they might be quite a good little outfit to start a save with. Or we do it unemployed and we just go with whoever offers us the job and go, right, you're the team that are going to take us on. Obviously, if you start unemployed, there's a chance the season started and you're already near the bottom. So there is that as well. So
Yeah.
if you can go straight in from the start, at least you get pre-season as well. But Steve, think about that. Be a legend in your town. You could turn the town into a city. You could literally do anything.
You'd have to build because that stuff. So, for example, again, to use the English pyramid example, you would be the National League North and South. Then you got the National League. Where's my hand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then you've got the Conference. Then you've got League Two. Then you've got League One. Then you've got the Championship, and then the Premier League. So you're talking 7 promotions.
I mean, Aaron can do this in a week. Accidentally winning the Champions League with a team that haven't even got ground.
I asked this pondering whether you actually it may not be something you know yet in terms of having either of you done this. Obviously, you're starting off with a team in that division. Do you have to then do things like you literally have to build a stadium, etc., etc.? I mean, the IRL example right now is Luton, who, albeit being in the Championship, because of their up and down story in recent years, Kenilworth Road, their ground, was nowhere near Premier League ready, so they had to spend like £10 million. I think they also had to delay one of their real life fixtures, because the stadium wasn't finished.
So, I don't believe. I mean, last time I did it was Blythe Spartans. That was the last time I took the club all the way from the bottom to the top. So we are talking FM10. If, of course, anyone who's listening, if this does happen and you do get blocked because of stadium and health and safety and that sort of stuff, let us know. But yeah, I've not managed to get all the way through. The game got a lot harder, Steve, than the last 13 years.
So yeah, I do believe your board. I do believe your board just sort of recognize the club is growing and will automatically kind of just upgrade your stadium anyway. Again, similar to my Romanian save where we got to the Champions League and then the next season we didn't quite make it to the group stages, so we got into the Europa League, and then the board has just used their money to kind of expand. And what he's done is just expand it each year to a point where it's like, I think he's just thought we're just gonna might as well just build a new stadium. So that's what's happening now. Yeah, so we're playing in a shared stadium at the moment and waiting for our stadium to be built.
Stadium.
Yeah. So that sort of stuff, I think you can actually request to build a new stadium, but most of the times your board will kind of recognize the club is growing and it would need to fix up its facility.
But that's something in terms of if you're doing a non-league to legends save, you'll have to be mindful of the fact that, like, if you're successful, another thing you'll have to think about is that off the field stuff in terms of your, because it's training as well, because all of that's going to help.
100%.
Yeah.
Training, of course, you can't do it because they've got jobs. So your training is midweek matches. But it's all stuff to think about. We've joked on, obviously, on previous shows about that sort of thing, and it is a very, very different way of playing. It's a long-term thing. What I think the benefit that I've found from it, Steve, is that you can, again, find, as we notice with all of these conversations, you find attachments to clubs you never thought you'd have an attachment to.
Yeah.
Okay, now you might find your local non-league side and you go, you know what, actually I'm going to start going and watching them now because I've fallen in love with that club. You might end up buying their shirts or whatever. And it's just those little things that, I think for me, that is the extra level that FM can bring to you. And it can make you think a little bit outside the box. Now that's why I'd put that on the table for you. Okay. But one thing I think is a little bit different, okay, say, for example, you want to just come away from a long-term save. There's a thing called an achievement hunter.
Okay.
Now, achievement hunter is in-game, mainly in the full game, okay? I can't say for definite whether this works on mobile or the console, okay? But in the full game, okay, you have achievements that Steam, for example, will tick off as you're going through the game, will flag. So, for example, you sell a player for £50 million, you win 5 games in a row, you lose 5 games in a row. There is, and again, someone will correct me on this, there is at least 100 achievements that you can have within Football Manager, and that includes things like take part in a draft tournament, take part in organize a sort of my club game or something.
Yeah.
So
You signed your first player. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
win a World Cup, be headhunted. So this is a long-term thing that you can then sort of like try and plot all these little achievements through, because you are going to have to move around. You can't necessarily win everything just in one continent. We'll get onto this in a little bit as our next one. So you might want to win a World Cup in another continent. And of course, you have to move. So that means you set up a new club, set up a new save. And it doesn't have to be one save. It can be a lot of little saves. So, for example, you could go and win the league win the Champions League in Holland, for example. But then you might want to be headhunted. You might, because you start with Ajax, for example, to get headhunted, you might just go load up a league, do quite well, and then get moved to the top division. That would be a way of ticking off that. As soon as you've done it, lock the game down, go, start again. How about that?
I'm just looking
It's a bit
through
stop-starty,
on Steam. It is for FN22 anyway. It may have changed in 23, but 98 achievements in total.
Yeah, 100 in FN23.
There you go.
100.
And it does tell you as well, like what percentage of players have sort of, reached the achievement too. So my locked achievements that I haven't achieved yet so far include Shrewd Spender, which would be not surprised about at all, considering what I mentioned previously. Actually, another thing since the previous episode. Yeah, another thing too. Previous episode we mentioned looking at your board's transfer thing. Push that, so I now can get 40% of my transfer fee back rather than 25. So I'm still on a very restricted influx. So that's interesting. So you could, but yeah, if you want to make your team, Iron Curtains one, for example, team conceded the fewest league goals over an entire season, Starman, which is one of your players was selected in Team of the Year.
All of the seasons, the Invincibles, like all these things that, you'll be in the top 1% of FM players, I presume, if you can do it all. But
I think 11%, 19.3% of players have actually achieved the Invincible. I haven't, just in case anyone's wondering.
Not to humble brag here, lads. Not to humble brag here, but on FN22 again rather than 23, 28% of players have achieved the Invincible season, including. I did have an unbeaten year. I did have an unbeaten league-winning season, and I kept it on the final day when I was playing Roma, which previously mentioned my first Championship Manager, Football Manager love. I was 4-2 down with about 20 minutes left, and I was given 2 penalties. And I got one right at the death. And, there is historic concerns around refereeing in Italy. But FM will not have simulated that. But I was a bit like,
you say that. I was managing Turkey. I said just red cards. But this is very typical.
Never happened
in the game. But I want to ask people, because I'm just looking at the achievements. I haven't done the Invincible, but there's also another achievement here which I'm not sure if it's more difficult or not. Your team hasn't conceded a goal in 30 consecutive competitive matches. Now, what's more difficult, the unbeaten or not conceding in 30 competitive games?
I think not conceding in 30 competitive games.
Yeah, that's crazy focus. That's crazy focus from a team there.
I mean, you have got to be an incredible team in a really bad league.
But the fact that achievement's there, though, it must be achievable. But that one, unfortunately, I can't actually hover over it to see how many people have achieved it, because maybe it's actually none.
But also, as well, you'd have to both be, as you say, Tony, a terrible league with the best team, but also play a really doer sort of style of football, which means you don't. At all.
You could do it. You could do it as the Invincibles and literally play park the bus every single game, and you could just draw your way to success.
That's true. You don't have to win the title.
Go, everyone defend.
No one said you had to win without scoring, so you could just, as long as you don't concede, that's fine.
30 games without conceded.
So that sounds difficult. But how about, Stephen, this is our final one. How about winning the Champions League?
Yeah.
Is hard enough.
Would love to know how to do that. That'd be great. Yeah.
If you don't know how to do that, how about trying to win the Champions League in all of the continents where the Champions League equivalent is? Call it
So,
Pentagon Challenge.
so the Pentagon, that's 5. That means it's 5 then.
Yeah.
So the South American equivalent, North American equivalent, so Europe, Asian equivalent. That's the final one.
The African one.
Yes, that's it. There you go.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, that's
man,
tough.
no,
Bloody
no.
hell.
The African
That is
one I
tough, isn't it?
found was the toughest. So I thought I had a very good team in South Africa, but nope.
Yeah,
You could not
that's a
win
tough
that.
one. That is a tough one.
It is tough because knockout football as well. So you're not necessarily relying on your team just being that good. It's knockout football. Anything could happen. So that's a difficult one.
So on each
That's one I
continent, you've
would
got to get
not be attempting.
So you've got to get to a level as a manager where you're going to be hired by a Champions League equivalent contender on every single continent, and then go through enough seasons where you win that. Wow. So what's the furthest that you've both got on that?
I have managed in Europe, and I've not got the Champions League for many, many years, to be honest. And
I've
that's
only
probably about
won,
as far as
yeah.
I've got.
Yeah.
I've only won it in Europe. I found the South American one and African ones was very difficult, very very difficult. I think some of it maybe because in Europe I'm familiar with some players' names and stuff like that and teams. I'm just more familiar with that sort of stuff. So when I'm playing against a PSG or something, it's like, and then I can kind of tweak or try to do something magical to get that win. But then in like the African Champions League, I'm not quite familiar with the teams. I'm not quite sure who's actually the bigger team, even though Football Manager would tell you that either you're the favourites or the opponents are the favourites, that could also be based off form and stuff as well, not necessarily the club's reputation. It's just very difficult for me to judge the opponents when I'm not quite clued up on them.
And that's where we learn. That's where it becomes fun. So, yes, the Champions League is fun, but you know what? The Asian Champions League is also fun. So, there we go. So, that's some new ideas. Steve, I'm not sure if any of those have sort of tickled your fancy a little bit for FM24, possibly, but or maybe even if you're listening or watching, maybe it sparked something in you. Maybe you're thinking, that's it. That's what I've been looking for. Do, of course, feel free to let us know in the comments or send us a message via social media. Twitter, which we've now racked up over 500 followers on, which is very, very impressive. We're very happy about that in about 5 or 6 weeks. So thank you for all your support there. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, of course, join the Discord as well and have a conversation with us in there. Or send us an email to the FM Show Pod. That's the FM Show Pod at gmail.com. And Steve, you've been in the mailbag and in Discord. Have you found anything this week?
Yes, I have. I've rummaged through, and what I've plucked out for this episode comes from Matty Zucks. So thanks for messaging in, Matty. This is a Discord one. Obviously, as Tony mentioned, there are many ways you can get in touch with us with big or small messages, and we appreciate every single one. So Matty says, do my first ever FM save at Southampton. So this is on the FM Touch for the Nintendo Switch. So obviously a slightly more limited functionality, but still a fun experience nonetheless. So with Southampton, made it to the Carabao Cup semis against Manchester City. It just says City. I'm assuming it's Manchester City, but this is a slightly older proper football man bugbear of mine. There is Leicester City, Coventry City.
Yes.
Others I can't remember right now, but still there are more cities than just Manchester City. So assuming Manchester City, especially if it's the League Cup, and they always bloody win that, don't they? However, not this time, because somehow Matty's Southampton side beat them in the league. Lost the first leg at the Etihad 4-2, despite a good performance. Back at St Mary's, lost 6-3 on aggregate. In order to try and sort of counteract all of this, where they are 6-3 in the tie, I should say, the half-time they went very attacking, counter-pressing with a high line against Manchester City. Ended up scoring 3 in the second half to send it to extra time. It's 6-6. So it was 6-6 before on aggregate. Extra time, because remember the League Cup semi-finals, 2-legged, then it can go to extra time. In my head, I'm like,
that's why you need your rest and recovery. Those legs are gone now, aren't they?
Exactly that. So 6-6, normal time. Extra time, they go behind, but then equalise immediately. Penalties at 7-7 over 2 legs and extra time of a League Cup semi-final. Southampton missed just the one. Man City, as relentless as they are in real life as an FM manager, lose 5-4 on penalties. But as a performance, and it feels like one of those games that you're living that. I was talking about the 4-2 to looked at being down to Roma to draw 4-4 a few seasons back to remain invincible in that season. We've all lived games like that where you're going through it and we're done now. We're done. No, we're not. You know, we've all done that. So Matty was delighted with that performance and with the team in general, with the excitement, because he's a long-term FIFA player, but FM lurker, which means he's sitting on a big fan of a certain idea tactics amongst other people, and looking for a reason and wanting to get into FM for a while now. I've never had this feeling in FIFA before. I was celebrating goals like I was there. So, Matty, welcome. If FM Touch is the sort of, I was going to say gateway to FM in a broader sense, but that feels like the wrong image to evoke there, really. But if that's the way to get into it in terms of what the console you currently have, you're more than welcome. I'm glad that you found the sort of joy and excitement that Football Manager can bring, and the fun as well, because like we do always say, this game, at least sometimes, should be fun.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, as you say, Matty, appreciate you getting in touch. And of course, if you do want to get in touch with us, remember, it's thefmshowpod@gmail.com. That was episode 6 of The FM Show, hosted by myself, Tony Jameson. My co-host is Aaron Falloon, aka RDF Tactics. Our producer is producer Steve Hankey. Take care of yourself. See you soon, when hopefully the builders have stopped bashing around. See you in a bit.